The fluorescent lights in the interrogation room hummed with a frequency that felt designed to extract confessions. They buzzed against my skin, against my teeth, making every word I spoke feel like a tiny betrayal of myself. Detective Morrison sat across from me, his kind eyes the most dangerous thing in this sterile white box. Kind eyes made you slip. Kind eyes made you forget you were supposed to be performing. I performed. I've been over it 100 times in my head, I whispered, letting my voice crack on the last word. My hands wrapped around the lukewarm paper cup of water they'd given me, fingers trembling on cue. I still can't. I can't make sense of it. Morrison leaned forward, elbows on the table, his whole body an invitation to trust him. Take your time, Isla. There's no rush. No rush. The irony almost made me laugh. Every second I sat in this chair was a second too long. Every question was a wire I had to dance around without tripping. The painting was gone. The gallery was a crime scene. And I was the perfect victim, shaken, helpful, empty-handed of anything useful. That was the role I'd chosen. That was the mask I wore. The gala had just ended. I began, letting my eyes go distant, unfocused, like someone revisiting trauma. Maybe 20 minutes after the last guests left. I was doing my final walkthrough, checking the rooms, making sure everything was secure. It was my routine. Every night, the same routine. Morrison nodded, making notes. Behind him, a one-way mirror reflected my own fragile image back at me. I knew there were people on the other side, watching, analyzing, looking for the lie beneath the truth. They wouldn't find it. I'd spent weeks becoming someone who could survive this room. I heard something in the east wing. A crash. I swallowed, making it audible. At first I thought it was a display falling. It's happened before. Someone leans too close during a viewing. The security catches it, but the damage is already done. So I went to check. I wasn't scared. Not then. The memory wasn't the lie. The memory was real. I had heard the crash. I had walked toward the sound with my heart beating in that ordinary way, the way it beats before everything changes. When I got to the Vermeer room, the lights were out. My voice dropped lower. That's not supposed to happen. Those lights never go out. I stood in the doorway for a second, trying to see, and then I stopped. Let the silence stretch. Let them fill it with their own assumptions. And then Morrison prompted gently. He came out of nowhere. The lie tasted like copper on my tongue. 1 second the room was empty. The next, there was this figure. All in black. Masked. He grabbed me before I could scream. This part was delicate. Too much detail and I'd sound rehearsed. Too little and I'd seem evasive. I'd practiced this account in the mirror of Liam's apartment while he watched, offering notes like a director shaping a performance. Slow down here. Breathe here. Let your eyes water here. He threw me against the wall. I touched the back of my head, where a bruise had bloomed purple and black. That part was real too. Not from a stranger. From the edge of the bed frame in the dark, when Liam and I had been careless with our urgency, when passion had spilled into clumsiness. But the bruise served the story. The bruise made me believable. I hit my head. Everything went fuzzy. I couldn't fight back. I couldn't even see straight. Morrison's jaw tightened. Good. Let him feel protective. Let him see me as something fragile that needed defending. When I came to, he was gone. The painting was gone. The alarm system had been bypassed somehow, and I just... A single tear, perfectly timed, slid down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly, like I was embarrassed by it. I should have done something. I should have been faster, smarter. I've worked there for 3 years. I know every inch of that building. I should have. Hey. Morrison's voice softened further. You're not the one who failed here. The security failure was systemic. You're lucky you weren't seriously hurt. Lucky. Such a strange word for someone who had walked into a police station carrying enough secrets to burn her life to ashes. They'd asked me to come in voluntarily. Just to clarify a few details, the detective who called had said. As if I had a choice. As if saying no wouldn't have painted a target on my back. So I dressed carefully that morning, a soft sweater in pale grey, no makeup except concealer under my eyes, my hair pulled back in a way that made me look younger, more vulnerable. I'd practiced my walk in the mirror, shoulders slightly curved, steps hesitant, the posture of someone still carrying the weight of violence. The police station smelled like coffee burned hours ago and the particular sadness of fluorescent light on linoleum. I'd signed in at the front desk with a hand that shook on command. I'd accepted the paper cup with a whispered thank you. I'd followed the officer to this room with the obedient shuffle of someone who had nothing to hide. Nothing could have been further from the truth. Can you describe anything about him? Morrison asked. Height. Build. Any identifying features at all? I closed my eyes, letting them think I was reaching for a memory instead of constructing a fiction. Tall. Broad shoulders. Strong. I felt that when he pushed me. My eyes opened, focusing on a point just past Morrison's shoulder. He wore gloves. Black tactical ones. And his mask covered everything except his eyes. Could you see the eyes? Yes. This was the moment that mattered. This was the thread I had to pull without unraveling everything. They were pale. Very pale. Blue, I think, but almost colorless in the dark. Cold. They looked empty. Morrison wrote it down. Behind the mirror, someone else would be noting it too. Pale eyes. Empty eyes. A description that could fit 1,000 men and none of them would be Liam. Liam's eyes were the color of whiskey in sunlight. Liam's eyes crinkled at the corners when he laughed. Liam's eyes had looked at me across a crowded gallery opening 3 months ago and seen someone worth knowing. Those eyes had never looked empty. Those eyes had looked at me like I was the only painting in the room worth studying. Anything else? Morrison pressed. Voice. Accent. Did he say anything at all? I shook my head slowly. Nothing. He didn't make a sound. That's what scared me most, I think. The silence of it. Like he'd done this before. Like I was just an obstacle. Not even worth acknowledging. The truth beneath the lie, Liam had spoken to me that night. After the crash, after the darkness, after I'd walked into that room with my heart pounding in genuine fear. He'd emerged from the shadows not as a stranger but as the man I loved, and for one terrible moment, I hadn't recognized him. The mask, the all-black clothing, the way he moved, it transformed him into someone else entirely. Then he'd pulled off the mask and smiled, and my heart had restarted with a jolt so powerful I thought I might faint. Hey, he'd whispered, crossing to me in 3 quick strides. Hey, it's me. It's okay. It's me. I'd grabbed his arms, feeling the solid reality of him beneath my fingers. Did you get it? He'd nodded, eyes bright with something I couldn't name. Triumph. Fear. Love. All of it tangled together. It's done. We need to move. And then, because we were young and foolish and drunk on what we'd done, he'd kissed me. Right there in the empty gallery, with the Vermeer hidden in a bag at his feet and the alarm system counting down its final silent seconds before the police arrived. He'd kissed me like we'd just done something beautiful instead of something criminal. I'd kissed him back. We need to make it look real, I'd said against his mouth, pulling away. I need bruises. Something that shows I fought. Liam's face had shifted then, understanding dawning. Isla. Do it. I'd grabbed his wrists, placed his hands on my shoulders. Quickly. Before I lose my nerve. He'd shaken his head, resisting. I can't hurt you. That's not. It's not you hurting me. It's us protecting ourselves. There's a difference. I'd stepped back, braced myself against the wall. Push me. Hard. Right here. I'd touched the spot where the wall met the corner of a display case. And don't catch me. Let me fall. The memory of his hesitation would stay with me forever. The way his hands had trembled against my shoulders. The way his eyes had searched mine for permission, for absolution, for something I couldn't give him because I needed him to act before I changed my mind. Then he'd pushed. The impact had been real. The pain had been real. The way my vision had blurred and my knees had buckled, all of it horrifyingly, perfectly real. I'd slid down the wall with a cry that came from somewhere deeper than performance, and when I'd looked up, Liam was already gone. The painting was gone. And I was alone in the darkness, waiting for the sirens, touching the tender spot on my head and wondering if this was what love always felt like, beautiful and terrifying and just slightly too fast to fully comprehend. Miss Vance. Morrison's voice pulled me back to the present. Isla. You went somewhere just now. I blinked at him, letting confusion cloud my features. Sorry. I keep going back there. In my head. Reliving it. Totally normal. He set down his pen, a gesture of warmth. You've been through something traumatic. It's going to take time to process. Time. Yes. Time to process that I'd helped steal a $20 million painting. Time to process that the man I loved was now a fugitive. Time to process that every word out of my mouth in this room was a carefully constructed lie designed to keep us both free. Is there anything else you need from me? I asked, making my voice small. I should probably go home. I haven't slept well since it happened. Morrison nodded, standing. We'll be in touch if anything comes up. In the meantime, take care of yourself. And Isla. He paused at the door. If you remember anything else, anything at all, call me directly. He handed me a card. Day or night. I took it with both hands, like it was something precious. I will. Thank you. The walk through the station was a gauntlet of glances. Curious, sympathetic, professional. I kept my eyes down, my step small, my whole body a study in quiet endurance. By the time I pushed through the glass doors into the grey afternoon, my jaw ached from holding the expression. The rain had started. Fat, cold drops that soaked through my sweater in seconds. I stood on the steps for a moment, letting it wash over me, feeling the mask begin to crack. Then I walked. Not toward my apartment, not toward the gallery, but toward the edge of the city, where the train tracks ran parallel to the river and the buildings grew older and more forgiving. Toward the motel with the flickering neon sign and the door that would open to reveal whiskey-colored eyes. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A single word from an unknown number. Well. I typed back with thumbs that barely trembled. Clean. The rain fell harder. I walked faster. And somewhere ahead of me, in a room that smelled like stale cigarettes and possibility, the man I loved was waiting with a stolen painting and a future I couldn't quite see but couldn't stop running toward. 3 months before the heist, I was invisible. Not in the tragic, poetic sense. Not the kind of invisible that comes from being overlooked by a world that should have seen you. I was the functional kind of invisible. The kind that keeps things running smoothly while no one notices the hands doing the work. At the Ashworth Gallery, I was the person who knew where everything lived. The emergency contact list. The combination to the safe in the back office. The way the morning light hit the east wing at 7:43 a.m., creating a glare on the Monets that Mrs. Ashworth hated. I was 27 years old, and I had perfected the art of being useful without being memorable. The gallery was my world. 3 floors of polished marble and carefully curated silence, housing paintings worth more than I would earn in 10 lifetimes. I'd started as an intern during my final year of university, fresh-faced and eager, believing that proximity to beauty would somehow make my own life more beautiful. 3 years later, I was still there. Still eager. Still believing, though the belief had grown quieter, more desperate. My apartment was a studio in a neighborhood where the rent hadn't skyrocketed yet, furnished with things from my mother's basement and the creeping realization that this was what adulthood felt like. Not freedom, not adventure, just the slow accumulation of days spent making other people's visions come alive. I didn't hate my life. That would have required more emotional energy than I had to spare. I simply existed inside it, waiting for something I couldn't name. The night I met Liam, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was working. The gallery was hosting a private viewing for a new acquisition, a small but significant piece by a Dutch Golden Age painter whose name I've trained myself not to say out loud. The piece that would later disappear. The piece that would change everything. But that night, it was just another painting behind velvet ropes, surrounded by people who talked about art the way they talked about stocks, as something to own, to leverage, to display as proof of their own importance. I was stationed near the entrance, holding a tray of champagne flutes I'd been instructed to offer only to serious collectors. As if I could somehow intuit net worth by the cut of a suit. As if I was supposed to be a gatekeeper for carbonated wine. The evening dragged. I smiled until my cheeks ached. I directed people to the restrooms, answered questions about the artist's biography, pretended not to notice when a man in a $5,000 jacket ran his fingers along a frame he'd been explicitly told not to touch. And then he walked in. I noticed him before he noticed me, which felt appropriate. That was my role, after all, to notice, to observe, to remain unseen. He came through the door without the usual hesitation of first-time attendees, without the scanning glance that said who matters in this room. He simply walked in like he belonged there, like the space had been waiting for him to arrive. He was tall. Not model tall, not intimidating tall, but tall in a way that made the room adjust around him. Dark hair, slightly too long, curling at the collar of a jacket that was expensive but not new, the kind of jacket you could tell had been chosen carefully, worn deliberately. His hands were in his pockets, his posture relaxed, his eyes moving slowly across the space like he was reading a book he already loved. I watched him bypass the champagne. I watched him ignore the cluster of serious collectors surrounding the new acquisition. I watched him drift instead toward the far corner of the main gallery, where the lighting was slightly dimmer, where the paintings were older and less celebrated, where my favorite painting lived. It was a small piece, unsigned, unattributed, purchased at auction for a fraction of the gallery's usual budget. The official story was that it was in the style of someone important. The unofficial story, the one I'd told myself during slow afternoons, was that it had been painted by a woman. Someone whose name had been lost, whose work had been dismissed, who had mixed her pigments with something more vulnerable than oil. I'd never told anyone why I loved it. I'd never had anyone to tell. He stood in front of that painting for a long time. Longer than the serious collectors had stood in front of the $1 million acquisition. His head tilted slightly, his whole body still in a way that suggested genuine attention rather than performance. I should have stayed by the door. I should have kept my eyes on the entrance, on the tray, on anything except this stranger with his quiet appreciation for the wrong painting. Instead, I crossed the room. "Can I help you with something?" The words came out more defensive than I'd intended. Professional, but with an edge. The edge of someone whose private space had been entered. He turned, and for the first time, I saw his eyes fully. Whiskey-colored in the dim light. Warm in a way that contradicted the sharpness of his cheekbones, the confidence of his stance. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice was exactly what I should have expected. Low, measured, carrying the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't place. Was I not supposed to look at this one? "You're supposed to look at the acquisition. Everyone else is." His mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but the suggestion of one. "And you're supposed to be offering champagne to people who matter." He nodded toward the tray I'd somehow carried across the room without noticing. "Seems we are both failing at our assigned roles tonight." I should have walked away. I should have laughed politely and returned to my post. Instead, I heard myself say, "What do you see in it?" He looked back at the painting, and something in his expression shifted. Softened. "Solitude," he said quietly. "But not loneliness. There's a difference. Loneliness is empty. This is full. Full of itself. Full of the person who painted it." He paused, considering. Whoever she was. The word hit me like a physical thing. She. He'd seen it too. He'd looked at this forgotten painting by an unknown hand and seen what no one else in this building had ever bothered to notice. "How do you know it was a woman?" I asked. He glanced at me sideways, that almost smile returning. "How do you?" We stood there for a moment, suspended in the strange intimacy of mutual recognition. Around us, the party continued, the clink of glasses, the murmur of deals disguised as conversation, the careful choreography of wealth performing itself. But in this corner, with this painting, we existed in a different world entirely. "I'm Isla," I said finally. "Liam." He extended his hand, and when I took it, His grip was warm and certain and exactly right. Thank you for not making me pretend to care about the other one. You don't care about the other one. I care about the story. He released my hand but didn't step back, didn't create the distance that strangers usually maintained. The acquisition has a story, sure, but it's a story everyone knows. Provenance, ownership, value. This one. He gestured at the painting. This one has secrets. I've always preferred secrets. Something dangerous flickered in my chest. Something that felt like the beginning of a story I hadn't known I was allowed to want. I should have returned to my post. I should have made an excuse about my responsibilities, about the tray growing heavy in my hands. Instead, I said, the gallery closes to the public at 6, but I'm usually here until 8, doing closing tasks. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something beyond the warmth. Something sharper. More calculating. The flicker of a mind working faster than it let on. I'll remember that, he said. He didn't come the next night. Or the night after. I told myself I wasn't waiting, wasn't checking the door every time it opened, wasn't replaying our conversation in my head like a song I couldn't stop humming. I told myself he was just a stranger, just a moment, just the brief collision of two people who happened to love the same forgotten painting. By the fourth night, I'd almost convinced myself. I was in the east wing, adjusting the angle of a display light, when I heard footsteps behind me. Not the hurried click of a late visitor being ushered out, not the heavy tread of the security guard on his rounds. Something slower. More deliberate. Still here, Liam said. I turned, and there he was. Same jacket, same warm eyes, same almost smile. But something else too, something in the way he held himself that I hadn't noticed before. A tension beneath the relaxation. A watchfulness beneath the charm. The painting misses you, I heard myself say, and immediately regretted it. Too much. Too revealing. But he only laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of him, and the tension broke. Does it talk about me? Only in whispers. It's very discreet. He moved closer, not quite entering my personal space but close enough that I could smell whatever expensive thing he used on his skin. Cedar. Something green. The ghost of cigarettes, though I'd never seen him smoke. Show me your favorite, he said. What? Your favorite painting in the gallery. Not the one you're supposed to love. The one you actually love. He gestured around us. You're here more than anyone. You must have a secret favorite. I should have said no. I should have told him the gallery was closing, that I had tasks to finish, that this was inappropriate. Instead, I found myself walking toward the staircase that led to the third floor, where the permanent collection lived in relative obscurity. He followed without question. The third floor was my domain. The paintings here weren't valuable enough for serious security, weren't famous enough for serious attention. They were the gallery's quiet children, the ones who would never inherit anything. I loved them fiercely. I stopped in front of a small landscape, a river at dusk, painted in colors that shouldn't have worked together but somehow did. The artist was known, technically, but not celebrated. A man who had painted the same river for 40 years, watching it change, watching himself change, documenting something that no one else thought worth documenting. This one, I said. Liam studied it in silence. The minutes stretched. I watched his face, watching him watch the painting, and felt something shift inside me. The invisible girl, seen at last. It's about time, he said finally. What is? Not the painting. He turned to face me, and his eyes were different now. Softer. More present. You. Showing someone. Letting yourself be seen. The words landed somewhere I hadn't known was vulnerable. I felt my throat tighten, my eyes sting with a reaction I couldn't explain. You don't know me, I managed. I know you love a painting no one else notices. I know you work late when you don't have to. I know you asked me what I saw instead of telling me what to see. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. That's more than most people know about each other after years. The alarm system beeped softly in the distance, the warning that the building would fully lock in 15 minutes. The reminder that this moment, like all moments, was temporary. I should go, I said, but I didn't move. Let me walk you out. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a demand. It was simply an offer, extended without expectation, without the weight of what it might mean. I nodded. We walked through the darkened gallery together, our footsteps echoing in the silence. At the staff entrance, I pulled out my keys, aware of him watching, aware of how strange this was, a stranger seeing me home, a stranger who had somehow seen more of me in 20 minutes than most people saw in years. Same time tomorrow? He asked. Same painting. If you want. He smiled then, fully, and the warmth of it transformed his face entirely. I have a feeling I'm going to develop a deep appreciation for obscure landscapes. I laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of me, and the sound echoed in the empty street, bouncing off buildings, filling spaces I hadn't known were hollow. Tomorrow, I said. I watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller in the streetlight, and felt the first stirring of something I would later recognize as danger. Not the obvious kind, not the kind that announces itself with sirens and warnings. The quiet kind. The kind that feels like coming home to a house you didn't know you'd built. Behind me, the gallery stood dark and silent, holding its secrets. Ahead of me, Liam disappeared into the night, carrying something of mine I hadn't known I'd given away. I unlocked my bike, pedaled toward my tiny apartment, and tried not to think about whiskey-colored eyes and forgotten paintings and the terrifying possibility that my life was about to become something I couldn't control. I had no idea how right I was. The weeks that followed were an education in becoming someone else. Liam appeared at the gallery like clockwork. Not every night, that would have been noticeable, would have drawn the kind of attention neither of us wanted. But 3 times a week, sometimes 4, he would materialize in the final hour before closing, always finding me in whatever corner of the building I'd buried myself in. We never went anywhere. That was the strange thing. We didn't have coffee, didn't go to dinners, didn't do any of the things that normal people did when they were falling toward each other. Instead, we walked through the empty galleries while I finished my tasks, talking about everything except ourselves. Art, yes. Books, yes. The way the city looked from the roof of the gallery at midnight, which he somehow convinced me to see during one of my late shifts. But never the past. Never family. Never the small details that would have painted him as a person with a history, a context, a life beyond these stolen hours. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself that the way he looked at me, really looked, like I was the only person in any room, was enough. That the way he remembered small things I'd mentioned weeks earlier, the way he noticed when I was tired, the way he always seemed to know exactly what I needed before I asked, surely that was more important than a resume of where he'd come from. I was lying to myself, and I knew it. But knowing and stopping are different things when your heart has already made its decision. The night everything changed started like any other. Liam found me in the restoration studio, a small room on the 2nd floor where damaged paintings went to be healed. I was cataloguing a shipment that had arrived that morning. 3 canvases from a private collector, each requiring more attention than the gallery could afford to give them. You're hiding, he said from the doorway. I'm working. Same thing, for you. He moved into the room, his footsteps silent on the worn floorboards. What are they? I gestured at the paintings without looking up. 17th century. Religious scenes. The collector thinks they're valuable. They're not. But you're gentle with them anyway. I finally looked at him. He was standing close to one of the canvases, his head tilted in that way I'd come to recognize, the way that meant he was truly seeing, not just looking. The painting showed a woman kneeling, her hands reaching towards something outside the frame. Her expression was caught between hope and despair, the moment before either outcome resolved. She knows, Liam said quietly. Knows what? That she's about to lose something. He touched the edge of the frame, featherlight. Or maybe that she's about to gain something. It's the same expression, isn't it? The moment before, when you can't tell which way it's going to go. I set down my pen. Is this about the painting? He turned to face me fully, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. The warmth was still there, it was always there, but beneath it, something else had surfaced. Something serious. something that had been waiting. "It's about you," he said. "It's about me. It's about the thing I should have told you the first night we met." I waited. The room felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier. "I'm not who you think I am." The words landed like stones. I'd known, of course. On some level, I'd always known. The vagueness about his past. The way he never talked about work, about family, about anything that would anchor him to a normal life. The way he watched entrances and exits, the way his eyes scanned crowds, the way he always positioned himself with his back to the wall. But knowing and hearing are different things. "Who are you?" I asked, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. Liam moved to the window, looking out at the city below. The lights of passing cars painted moving shadows across his face. My grandfather was a collector. Not the kind who comes to galleries like this one. Not the kind with money to burn and names to drop. The real kind. The kind who loved paintings for what they were, not what they cost. He paused. He had one painting that meant more to him than anything. A Vermeer. Small, intimate, never exhibited publicly. It had been in our family for 3 generations. I felt my body go still. Vermeer. The acquisition. The painting that had arrived at the gallery 2 months ago, that had been the center of the private viewing where I'd first seen Liam. When the war came, he hid it. Buried it in the countryside, wrapped in oilcloth, with coordinates only he knew. He survived the war. The painting didn't. When he went back, it was gone. Liam's voice was calm, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the windowsill. He spent the rest of his life trying to find it. Died without ever seeing it again. Liam. The man who found it sold it. It passed through hands, through countries, through dealers who knew exactly what they had and exactly how to keep it quiet. And now. He turned to face me. Now it's here. In this gallery. Acquired by a man who calls himself a collector but is really just a fence in a nice suit. I thought of Mrs. Ashworth's husband, the silent partner whose name appeared on paperwork but never on guest lists. The way he sometimes looked at the paintings like they were commodities rather than art. The rumors I'd heard but never investigated, because investigating wasn't my job, wasn't my place, wasn't something the invisible girl did. "You're going to steal it," I whispered. "I'm going to take back what was stolen." He crossed to me, stopping just close enough that I could feel his presence without being touched. "I didn't come here for you, Isla. I came here for the painting. That was the plan. Case the gallery, learn the routines, find the weaknesses. You weren't supposed to happen." The words should have hurt. They should have felt like betrayal, like confirmation that everything between us had been strategy. But the way he said them, the way his voice broke slightly on the last word, told a different story. "But you did happen," he continued. "And now I'm here, telling you things I should never tell anyone, because the idea of doing this without you knowing feels like a worse betrayal than anything else I've done." I stepped back. Needed space. Needed air. Needed to think without the pull of his presence distorting everything. "How long have you been planning this?" "Months. Longer. Years, if you count the research." He watched me carefully, like he was afraid I might bolt. "I know the security codes. I know the rotation of the guards. I know that the alarm system in the East Wing has a 3-second delay between triggering and notification. I know that Mrs. Ashworth always leaves by the staff entrance at 7:15 on Fridays, and that her husband's security consultant recommended upgrading the locks on the storage vault, but he never authorized the expense because he's cheap and arrogant and convinced no one would dare." "Stop." My voice was sharp. Just stop. He stopped. I walked to the painting of the kneeling woman, studied her expression. The moment before, unable to tell which way it would go. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked without turning around. "Because I want you to come with me." The words hung in the air between us. I felt them land somewhere deep in my chest, somewhere dangerous. "After," he continued. "Not during. I would never put you in that kind of danger. But after. When it's done. When the painting is back where it belongs and the world is looking for a ghost." His voice softened. "I want you to be that ghost with me." I turned. You're asking me to leave my life. I'm asking you to choose a different one. He moved closer, close enough that I could see the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear beneath the confidence. I've been alone for a long time, Isla. Alone in a way that has nothing to do with being by myself. I didn't know I was waiting for you until I found you. You should have told me sooner. I know. You should have let me decide before I stopped myself, but it was too late. The words were already out, already hanging in the air between us. Before I fell in love with you. Liam heard them. I saw it in his eyes, the way they widened slightly, the way something shifted and settled into place. I know, he said again. And I'm sorry. But I'm not sorry for wanting you in my life. I'm not sorry for any of the nights we've spent together. I'm not sorry for loving you. The word we hadn't said, hadn't named, had only danced around in the spaces between conversations. He'd said it now. Laid it on the table like everything else. You're asking me to help you commit a crime. I'm asking you to help me right a wrong. He reached out, slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his hand cupped my face, warm and familiar and devastating. But more than that, I'm asking you to choose us. Whatever us means. Whatever us could become. I leaned into his touch despite myself. Despite everything. What would I have to do? The question was surrender, and we both knew it. The moment before was over. The choice was made. Liam's expression shifted. Relief, gratitude, and something else. Something darker. The weight of what he was asking. The night of the heist, you'll be working late. That's normal for you. No one will question it. His thumb traced my cheekbone, gentle. I need you to leave the staff entrance unlocked. That's all. Just that one door, just for 30 minutes. After that, you go about your normal routine. You hear a noise, you investigate, you get caught off guard. You're a victim, Isla. Just another victim. And the painting? Gone. Along with me. He pressed his forehead to mine. And then you wait. 3 days. I'll find you. We'll leave together. The plan was simple. Too simple. But simple plans were often the ones that worked, weren't they? Simple plans didn't have pieces that could fail. Why the bruises? I asked suddenly. In your story. Why do I need to be hurt? Something flickered in his eyes. Guilt. Regret. The weight of loving someone and still choosing to use them. Because it has to look real. Because if there's no struggle, no injury, they'll look closer. They'll ask harder questions. His voice dropped. I hate it. I hate that it has to be part of this. But if I'm going to ask you to risk everything, I have to ask you to risk it completely. I thought about it. Thought about pain, about performance, about the line between acting and being. Thought about the life I'd be leaving, the tiny apartment, the invisible existence, the slow accumulation of days that meant nothing. Thought about the alternative. A life with him. A life of movement, of purpose, of finally being seen. When? I asked. 3 weeks. The night of the Ashworth Charity Gala. Half the city will be in the building, which means half the city will be suspects. The chaos will work for us. 3 weeks. 21 days to become someone else. 21 days to prepare for the moment that would split my life into before and after. I'll do it, I said. Liam kissed me then, not the careful kisses of our early nights, not the passionate kisses of our stolen moments. Something different. Something that felt like a seal, like a promise, like the closing of a door behind us and the opening of a window we'd have to jump through together. When we finally pulled apart, the room felt different. The paintings felt different. I felt different. We should go, I whispered. Someone might. I know. He stepped back, and the loss of his warmth was physical. Same time tomorrow. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He left the way he always left, silently, like smoke, like he'd never been there at all. But this time, I knew where he was going. This time, I knew what he was carrying. I turned back to the kneeling woman in the painting. Her expression hadn't changed. Hope and despair, suspended forever in the moment before. I knew how she felt. 3 weeks. 21 days to become the woman who would leave everything behind for a man with whiskey-colored eyes and a stolen painting and a love that felt like the first real thing in my life. 21 days to learn how to lie to everyone I knew. 21 days to practice being a victim so convincingly that no one would ever suspect I was anything else. I touched my reflection in the window glass, whispered a goodbye to the person I'd been, and walked out into the night to begin the countdown. The motel stood at the edge of the city like a forgotten thought. I'd walked 47 minutes from the police station, through rain that soaked through my shoes and into the marrow of my bones. Past the train tracks, past the warehouses with their broken windows, past the overpass where the highway noise became a kind of silence. Every step carried me further from the person I'd been this morning and closer to the person I'd chosen to become. The sign flickered, Pine View Motel in letters that had lost half their light. There were no pines. There was no view. Just a 2-story building shaped like a horseshoe, doors opening onto external walkways, paint peeling in long strips that revealed older colors beneath. Room 14. Around the back, facing the river that wasn't really a river, just a wide, slow-moving channel of industrial water that glowed orange under the streetlights. I knocked twice, paused, knocked once. The door opened. Liam stood in the dim light of a single lamp, and for one breathless moment, everything was exactly as it should have been. His hair was mussed, his shirt untucked, his eyes soft with something I wanted to believe was love. Behind him, I could see the edge of a bed, a wooden chair, a worn suitcase lying open on the floor. "You're wet," he said. "I'm free." He pulled me inside, his hands framing my face, his lips finding mine in a kiss that tasted like relief and rain and the future I'd been running toward for 3 months. I melted into him, let myself disappear into the warmth of his body, let the last of the performance fall away. For 1 perfect minute, I was just Isla. Not the victim. Not the accomplice. Just the woman who had crossed a line for the man she loved. Then I saw the suitcase. Not the suitcase itself. That was nothing, just luggage, just preparation for travel. But what was in it? What was being packed with methodical precision while I'd been walking through the rain, while I'd been sitting in that interrogation room, while I'd been becoming someone I didn't recognize? The painting. It was propped against the wall, half wrapped in brown paper, its edges visible like a secret that refused to stay hidden. And next to it, stacks of cash. Banded, neat, too many to count at a glance. Liam. I pulled back, my voice catching on his name. "What is that?" He followed my gaze, and something in his expression shifted. Just slightly. Just enough to notice. The painting. Obviously. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We did it, Isla. It's really over." Over. I looked from the painting to the cash to his face, searching for the man I knew. "You said we'd leave together. You said after 3 days, we'd. And we will." He crossed to the suitcase, adjusting the paper around the painting's edges with careful hands. "But there are things we need to discuss first. Logistics. Timing. Where we go from here." Something was wrong. I felt it in my chest, in the space where certainty used to live. "Why is the painting still here?" I asked. "Why isn't it? Wherever it was going." Liam's hands paused. Just for a second. Just long enough. "It's complicated." "Explain it to me." I didn't move from the door. Didn't step further into the room. "Make me understand." He turned to face me fully, and for the first time, I saw what had been hiding beneath the warmth all these months. Not malice. Nothing so simple. Something more complicated. More human. Calculations. "There's a buyer," he said carefully. "There's always been a buyer. That's how these things work, Isla. You don't steal a painting like this to hang on your wall. You steal it to return it, or you steal it to sell it." Return it. I heard my voice go flat. "You told me you were taking it back. You told me it belonged to your family." "It does." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration that looked practiced, familiar. But belonging and owning aren't the same thing. My grandfather's family lost it. My grandfather's family doesn't exist anymore. The people who have it now, the people who bought it from the people who found it, they're not the ones who took it in the first place. I stared at him. You're selling it. I'm facilitating its return to a private collector who will appreciate it and protect it and never put it on display for people like Ashworth to use as a status symbol. His voice was calm, reasonable, the voice of someone who had explained this to himself many times. The money, that's for us. That's for starting over. That's for building something that isn't dependent on galleries or bosses or anyone else. The room felt smaller. The walls felt closer. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud in my ears. How much? Enough. How much, Liam? He hesitated. 7 figures. Split 3 ways. 3. The buyer's representative. A facilitator. Someone who made this possible. He stepped toward me, hands raised in a gesture of peace. Isla, I was going to tell you. Tonight. After you'd had time to process the heist, after the pressure of the interrogation was behind you. I was going to lay it all out and let you decide. Let me decide. I laughed, and the sound was ugly, nothing like me. Let me decide whether to run away with a thief or a thief with a plan. Such a generous offer. Don't. His voice sharpened. Don't make this something it's not. I love you. I've loved you from the first night in that gallery, when you asked me what I saw in that forgotten painting instead of telling me what to think. That wasn't a lie. That was never a lie. But everything else was. No. He shook his head, adamant. The story was true. My grandfather, the painting, the loss, all of it. What I didn't tell you was that I'm not the only one who wants it back. There are people who've been waiting years for this moment. People who made it possible for me to get close enough, to learn enough, to actually pull this off. People who are paying you. People who are paying us. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, too numb to resist. You think I did this alone? You think I could have afforded the research, the travel, the months of watching without a salary? They funded me. Isla. Believed in me. And now it's time to deliver. I looked down at our joined hands. His fingers, warm and familiar, wrapped around mine. The same hands that had cupped my face, that had traced my skin, that had pushed me into a wall hard enough to leave bruises. Was any of it real? I asked quietly. All of it. He squeezed my fingers. The feelings were always real. You were always real. The only thing I hid was the complexity of the situation, because I knew that if I told you everything at once, you'd run. And I couldn't lose you before I'd even had you. The logic was so smooth, so reasonable, so perfectly constructed to make me doubt my own instincts. I pulled my hand away. You should have trusted me. I should have done a lot of things. His eyes searched my face, looking for something, forgiveness, understanding, the woman who had left a door unlocked because she believed in a story. But I'm asking you now. Come with me. Not because of the money, not because of the plan, but because of us. Because what we have is real, and rare, and worth building something around. Behind him, the painting waited. A woman in a quiet room, caught in a moment of private contemplation. Vermeer's gift had been making the ordinary feel sacred. A woman reading a letter, pouring milk, simply existing in her own space. That painting had launched 100 ships of interpretation, had inspired novels and films and the obsessive devotion of collectors. Now it was evidence. Now it was currency. Now it was the thing that would hang between us forever, whether we stayed together or not. Who are they? I asked. The buyers. Liam's jaw tightened. It's better if you don't know. Better for who? Better for everyone. For you, especially. The less you know, the less you can be forced to reveal. He moved closer, his voice dropping. This is how it works, Isla. This is the reality of the world we are entering. There are things I can't tell you, not because I don't trust you, but because trust isn't the issue. Safety is. Yours, mine, ours. I thought about the interrogation room, about Detective Morrison's kind eyes and careful questions, about the one-way mirror and the people behind it, watching, analyzing, waiting for me to slip. How do I know you're not lying now? The question hung between us. Fair, devastating, unanswerable. Liam looked at me for a long moment. Then he crossed to the suitcase, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to me. Your share, he said quietly. 200,000. The rest will be deposited once the transfer is complete. You can take it and walk away right now, and I'll never come looking for you. Or you can stay, and we can figure out the rest together. I looked at the envelope. Heavy in my hands. Heavy with implication. $200,000. More money than I'd ever touched. Enough to start over anywhere, to become anyone, to leave behind every trace of the invisible girl who'd spent 3 years serving champagne to people who never saw her. Or I could stay. Could choose him. Could choose us. Whatever us meant now that the story had cracked open and revealed something more complicated beneath. The painting, I said. When does it go? Tomorrow night. A handoff at the old warehouse district. Quick, clean, no names exchanged. And then we leave. Together. I have passports, documents, a route that takes us through 3 countries before we stop. He touched my face again, gentle. I meant what I said, Isla. I want you with me. Not because you helped, not because you're useful, but because you're the only person who's ever made me want to stop running. I should have said no. I should have walked out the door, taken the money, started over somewhere far from whiskey-colored eyes and impossible choices. Instead, I asked, what happens to the painting after tomorrow? Liam's expression shifted, relief, gratitude, and something else. Something that looked almost like sadness. It disappears. Goes into a private collection where no one will ever see it again. Protected, preserved, loved by people who understand its value in ways the public never could. Like a prison. Like a sanctuary. He pulled me close, his lips against my forehead. The painting gets what it's always deserved. And we get each other. That's the deal, Isla. That's the trade. I closed my eyes. Let myself feel the warmth of his body, the steadiness of his arms, the future that shimmered just beyond reach. Behind my eyelids, I saw the kneeling woman from the restoration studio. Hope and despair, suspended forever in the moment before. I still couldn't tell which way it would go. Didn't sleep that night. Liam did, eventually, curled on his side of the motel bed, one hand stretched toward me even in unconsciousness, his breathing slow and regular. I watched him for hours, tracing the lines of his face in the dim light filtering through the thin curtains. The sharp jaw, the dark lashes, the mouth that had spoken so many beautiful lies. Was that what they were? Lies? Or was the truth more complicated? A man who loved me but loved other things too, who had built a life on secrets and couldn't simply abandon them because one woman had unlocked something in his chest. The sky lightened slowly, grey and reluctant. By the time the first real light touched the window, I'd made my decision. I just didn't know it yet. Liam woke around 8, blinking at me with those whiskey-colored eyes that still made my heart stutter. You're awake. I'm thinking. About. He reached for me, but I didn't move into his arms. His hand hovered for a moment, then retreated. About tomorrow. About the handoff. About what happens after. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. Isla, we talked about this. The plan is solid. The buyers are professionals. There's no reason to. I'm not worried about the plan. I pulled my knees to my chest, wrapping my arms around them. I'm worried about us. Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of vulnerability, quickly masked. What about us? Who are we, Liam? Really? When the running stops, when the money's in accounts we can't access without flags, when we are in some country where we don't speak the language and don't know anyone, who are we going to be? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, we are going to be free. Free from what? Free to do what? I shook my head. I spent 3 years invisible at that gallery. I know what it feels like to disappear. And I thought what you were offering was the opposite of that. To be seen. To matter. To finally feel like my life was mine. It is. It can be. Can it? I looked at him directly, let him see everything I was feeling. Because right now, I feel more invisible than ever. I'm sitting in a motel room with a stolen painting and $200,000 I didn't earn, waiting for a man to sell a masterpiece to people I'll never meet, and I don't know if I'm your partner or your accomplice or just another thing you're moving around aboard. Liam's face went still. That's not fair. Tell me what is. My voice cracked. Tell me what's fair about any of this. Tell me what's fair about falling in love with someone and then finding out they've been keeping half their life hidden. Tell me what's fair about making me sit in that interrogation room, playing the victim, while you were here counting money and planning your next move. I did that to protect you. You did that to protect yourself. I stood, needing distance, needing air. You told yourself it was for me, but it was always about you. About your plan, your timeline, your idea of what we could be. I was just supposed to fit into it. To be grateful for the pieces you chose to share. Liam stood too, crossing toward me. Isla, stop. You're spiraling. We can figure this out together, but not if you're going to. Don't. I held up a hand, stopping him. Don't tell me what I'm doing. Don't manage me like I'm another variable in your equation. We stood facing each other across the small room, the space between us feeling wider than any ocean. Behind Liam, the painting waited in its half-wrapped state, a woman in a quiet room, forever unaware of the chaos surrounding her. What do you want? He asked finally. Tell me what you want, and I'll make it happen. The question should have been simple. Should have been the beginning of reconciliation, of compromise, of finding our way back to each other. Instead, it was the moment everything became clear. I want you to stay, I said. I am staying. I'm right here. No. I shook my head slowly. I want you to stay. Not run. Not sell the painting. Not disappear into some underground network of collectors and facilitators and people who trade in secrets. I want you to choose me, just me, not the money, not the plan, not the version of the future you've been building since before we met. Liam stared at me. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. Make me understand why the painting matters more than us. It doesn't matter more. His voice rose, frustration bleeding through. But it's not a choice between you and the painting. It never was. The painting is the means. You're the end. Can't you see that? What I see is a man who can't stop running long enough to find out if he actually wants to arrive somewhere. My eyes burned, but I wouldn't cry. Not now. Not yet. I love you, Liam. I love you in a way I didn't know I was capable of. But I can't spend my life being the person you come back to between escapes. I can't be the reason you pause instead of the reason you stop. The words landed. I watched them hit, watched him absorb them, watched something crack behind his eyes. Then come with me tonight, he said quietly. Be there for the handoff. See it through. And after, we'll figure out the rest. Together. No more secrets. No more plans I don't share. Just us. It was an offer. A real one, I thought. A hand extended across the distance. But it wasn't enough. If I go with you tonight, I'm choosing this life. This world. The running, the hiding, the looking over my shoulder forever. I met his eyes and held them. I need to know that if I make that choice, it's because I want it, not because I'm afraid of losing you. And if you don't come? The question hung in the air between us. Unbearable. Unavoidable. Then I guess we find out who we are without each other. Liam moved then, closing the distance in 2 strides, pulling me against him with a desperation I'd never felt from him before. His arms wrapped around me like he could keep me there by force of will alone. His face pressed into my hair, his breath ragged. Don't, he whispered. Please don't. I can't do this without you. I don't want to do this without you. I held him. Let myself feel the solid reality of him one last time. The warmth. The familiar scent. The heartbeat against my cheek that raced as fast as my own. Then I stepped back. "Then don't do it," I said. "Stay. Right here. Don't go to the handoff. Don't sell the painting. Let it go. Let them come looking. Let the whole thing fall apart. Stay with me, and we'll figure out what comes next, together, without the money, without the plan, without any of it." He stared at me. I watched the calculations happening behind his eyes, the weighing of options, the impossible choice between the life he'd built and the life I was offering. "I can't," he said finally. "You don't understand. I can't just walk away. There are people depending on me. People who trusted me. People who—" "Then you've made your choice." The words came out calm. Steady. The calmest I'd felt since walking into that interrogation room. Liam's face crumpled. "Isla, no. That's not. I'm not choosing them over you. I'm choosing responsibility. Obligation. Things I can't just abandon because you love me." I shook my head, a sad smile touching my lips. Love shouldn't require abandonment. It shouldn't require choosing between the person you are and the person you could be. If you love me, really love me, then staying should feel like freedom, not sacrifice. I walked to the suitcase, pulled out the envelope with my name on it, $200,000, neatly banded, heavier than it looked. Then I walked to the door. "Isla." His voice broke on my name. "Isla, please. Don't walk out that door. Don't leave me here alone." I turned back one last time, committed his face to memory, the whiskey eyes, the sharp jaw, the mouth that had kissed me like I was the only thing in the world worth tasting. "I'm not leaving you alone," I said softly. "I'm choosing myself. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself." I opened the door. "The money," he said desperately. "At least take the money." I looked down at the envelope in my hands, thought about what it represented, the price of my silence, the value of my participation, the cost of loving a man who couldn't love me back without conditions. Then I set it on the nightstand, next to the lamp, within easy reach. "That's your world," I said. "I don't want it anymore." I walked out into the grey morning. The rain had stopped sometime during the night, leaving the world washed clean and glistening. I walked past the empty parking spaces, past the flickering sign, past the train tracks and the warehouses and the overpass where the highway noise became a kind of silence. I walked until the motel was just a memory behind me, until the city rose up around me again, familiar and strange all at once, until I found myself on a bridge, looking out at the river, watching the light catch the water in ways that almost looked like hope. I had no money, no plan, no future I could see, but I had myself. For the first time in my life, I had myself completely, not the invisible girl, not the victim, not the accomplice. Just Isla. Standing on a bridge. Breathing clean air. Alive. Behind me, somewhere in that motel room, a man I loved was packing a painting into a suitcase, preparing to disappear into a world I'd almost joined. I wished him well. I wished him peace. I wished him someone who could love him without losing herself. But I wasn't that person anymore. I'd unlocked the door for him once, let him into my life, my heart, my carefully constructed world. And when it was over, when the truth had shattered everything I thought we were, I'd learned something important. The only door that really mattered was the one I opened for myself. I walked on. The city waited. My life waited. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't waiting for anyone else to show me the way.